Y'all ready? Everybody ready? I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Ives, the salute to the New Mexico flag led by Councilor Rivera, and the invocation led by Councilor Lindell, and then we'll have a moment for reflection.
Thank you, Mayor. You could join me in the us version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'd like to, in our remembrances tonight, remember a young couple from our city, Christina Martinez and Rob Gallegos. Young couple doing the right thing, taking an Uber. Lost their lives to a drunk driver. I ask that you remember them kindly, and that we remind each other that those are preventable deaths. Are there other remembrances tonight? Councilor Harris?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Lindell. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Jim Spray. Jim is a fellow that I've known for a long, long time. He was a neighbor, as well as in a similar business also. So my condolences to Linda Spray, his wife, and to the rest of their family. Thank you.
Let's take a minute of silence, please. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Weber.
Present.
Councilor Beta.
Here.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Ives.
Here.
Councilor Lindell. Councilor Rivera.
Here.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Here.
Councilor Vihil Coppler. Here. Councilor Villarreal.
Present.
You do have a quorum present, Mayor.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to approve or amend the agenda? I'm sorry.
I've got one amendment, sir. On page 6, item 10EE, under request to publish, we are removing from the agenda item 2, it's Bill 2019-15, and this is an ordinance amending 1113 to increase transparency regarding competitive seal proposals and competitive seal qualifications-based proposals, and to amend citations to state statutes. So this bill did not get approval from either the Finance Committee or the Public Works Committee.
So this is double E number 2?
Yes.
Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? Councilor Ives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the leave of the governing body, I would request that item number 11, which is a request for approval to suspend governing body procedural rule 1B3 per resolution 2016-64, be moved up on the agenda before consideration of any consent items that might be pulled. I ask this as a longtime colleague of mine who is retiring from my organization. The Trust for Public Land is being honored tonight, and that was This matter was one I wanted to make sure I had opportunity to address, but I would likely depart early, unfortunately, in order to honor that person.
Is there any objection to that? None. Okay, we'll make that. Can we make, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, Claire?
And I have one more item.
Well, so
The-
before we do that, let's make sure everybody's okay with moving item number 11. Councilor Rivera? Everybody?
That'll be a part of the approval of the agenda.
Okay. And what else?
And then item H2 and H1, I would like to flip those, so I would like item H2 to be heard first, and then
Okay.
H1 would become H2. We would just flip the order on those two.
Okay, so we have one more.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members,
Usually, that's Councilor Romero Worth, but wait, one more thing.
on that matter, the Amit settlement is not ready for a vote yet, so I would like to ask the governing body to table that until the next meeting.
So that will not be part of any executive session.
That's correct. And then there's an action item listed as agenda item 15, so I would like us to table that until the following governing body meeting.
Very well. Okay, is there, yes, Councilor Rivera?
Just a point of order question, because I'm not sure we've seen this before, but on item DD, where it talks about the hearing officer's approvals, number 2 is subject to approval of number 1. So do we need to pull that automatically in order to do it in the order that it suggests, or if we approve it, it's just approved as both?
Thank you, Councilor Rivera, Mayor Weber, councilors. That item is going for approval. So DD requests recommendation to approve the following requests. So the waiver was approved, as well as the beer and wine license. So you won't need to pull it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I'll move for
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. So we are going into executive session for other things?
Yes.
Mayor Weber, Councilor Romero Worth, yes.
Okay, just wanted
There
to
is
be...
one item still pending,
Okay.
but we've removed one of the two.
Great, thank you.
I'll move for approval as amended.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The consent calendar. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
All right. Please call the roll.
You bet. Councilor Beta.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Ives.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell. Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes?
Councilor Villal-Coppler. Yes. Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion is approved.
thank you.
Thank you.
That leads us to the approval of minutes from the regular city council meeting of May 8, 2019. There are amendments? Yeah, Councilor Villal-Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 14, about the last, toward the last, let's see, third paragraph from the bottom, where it says Councilor Villal-Coppler asked the city needs to do, or said that the city needs to do a better job. The third line down, it says she got a complaint from an 80-year-old woman who walks with the cane in the streets because owners have blocked the sidewalk with foliage. And that is all. Thank you.
Okay. So are there, yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 7, fourth paragraph, it says, Councilor Villarreal said she would ask, it says for the privilege, it should say she would ask for people to acknowledge their privilege.
Good catch. Okay.
Thank you.
Several amendments. Any other corrections or amendments? Okay, can we get a motion on it?
Move to approve the minutes as amended.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We now have the pleasure of several presentations, and I turn it over to the first proclamation, which I believe is being handled by three of our counselors to participate in a reading of a proclamation down in front. I get to do some of it.
Sure, we'll read it, but you can call them down.
All right. Can we have the St. Mike's girls Pony Express come down? Coach Sanchez and whoever else is here. Congratulations. 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 So as Coach Sanchez knows, because we graduated around the same time, she's a little bit older than me though. Class of '84 at St. Mike's. And better looking, yes sir. So, you know, we typically do this all the time for the Pony Express, and it's just amazing the work that Coach Sanchez puts in and the girls. I used to coach football at St. Mike's, and one day we went to their practice and thought we could hang with them, and the boys were destroyed. It was not a pretty sight. So, but Lydia's been a great story at St. Mike's. How many state championships in a row? 27 total. It's amazing. And I read in...
And we missed a national championship by .02. We lost to Grenoble.
Wow.
We were runners-up, but we are still proud.
And we'll let you have the mic so you can repeat that in a second. But she's been great the entire time. And I read in the paper this year that she had actually... other coaches had reached out to her within the district and I think throughout the state and asked for pointers for help, and she was more than willing to help anyone that asked for help out. So you're just such a great story for St. Mike's, and on behalf of the class of '84 and all the other alumni at St. Mike's, we're so proud of you and the girls. Congratulations.
So I have, Office of the Mayor, an official proclamation of the City of Santa Fe, and Councilor Romero Wirth is going to help me read it. Whereas St. Michael's High School is a learning and teaching community committed to excellence, whose mission is to ensure the success of diverse learners through rigorous, relevant, and challenging explorations, empowering students to find success as they further their educational experiences in the spirit of faith. And whereas the Pony Express dance team exceeded all other teams in the state of New Mexico and captured their 27th AAA state championship. And whereas the Pony Express dance team was made up of a diverse group of young women from our community, exemplifying the diversity that makes the city of Santa Fe great.
Whereas each coach, volunteer, parent, and dancer was an integral part of the dance team. And whereas the Pony Express dance team was encouraged and assisted by the support of their coach, Lydia Sanchez, whose 30 years of leadership and dedication was produced national recognition, including a national title and numerous top 10 national rankings. And whereas the St. Michael's Pony Express dance team is recognized for their skill and determination, which led them to a great finish and coalesced the students and faculty of St. Mike's High School around their uplifting run to the state championship. And now I'll pass it to the mayor to do his magic.
I get to have the wow finish. You know in a dance act, it's how you finish, right? You got to stick the landing. Now, therefore, I, Alan Weber, mayor of the city of Santa Fe, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 29, 2019, as St. Michael's Pony Express Dance Day.
I'd like to take a minute to let you know that we did have a secret weapon this year.
and last year and the year before, Lauren Abbey volunteered, one of the grandmas. She worked with the girls every morning at 5:30 a.m. with ballet, Pilates, and anything else you can think of. So thank you, Lauren. And since most of the team is out of town, I'll introduce you to the two girls that are in town. Our captain, Aubrey Garduno, and Alicia Baca. Alicia's older sister was on the dance team, and I also coached her mother, so I've been here a long time.
It's a family affair. Thank you all very much. Congratulations. We're very proud of you. We're really proud of you. Thank you. Good job. Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. But wait, there's more. We now have another routine, and it's led by...
We're going to do a dance routine. Think you can handle it? We're here to honor one of our own, this on. And I just wanted to welcome the family here. We're so happy to see all of you and colleagues of Sebastián Gurale. And before we read a very long proclamation because of his legacy here at the City of Santa Fe, just wanted to thank Seb for being an amazing mentor for me. Coming into the city as a new elected is a challenge, and I feel like you were one of the few that really helped me understand the ins and outs, and because of what you know about the city, it was very easy to integrate into the city because of your legacy. And so thank you so much for being able to help me through just getting started when I first came. The other thing I wanted to thank you for is how you always stress the importance of never forgetting our raíces and our roots, and knowing that how important that is, and also that our cultural and excuse me, gets me emotional, that our cultural heritage and tradition will always live as long as we feel it in us, inside ourselves. So thank you for that. Did you want to say?
I too would like to thank Sebastián on a personal level. When I was the fire chief, he and I worked together in the city on many things. Our families go back quite a ways. My wife and his family go back even further than that. He's always been a great friend. He sang when I retired in these chambers. Him and Albert came and sang to me. I wish I had that kind of talent, Sebastián, but you don't want to hear me sing. It will not be pretty. But thank you for being a great friend throughout those years. Even now as a city councilor, could always go to you with questions, and you were always available. But the greatest thing I'll remember about you is the way you treated the people, the gente from here in Santa Fe, the older Santa Feans that weren't sure what was going on or how to take care of it. You always knew how to communicate with those people, and that's what I'll always remember about you. That's your legacy, is the way you touched the older, the gente from here in Santa Fe. So you'll always be remembered for that. So I don't think we want to read to you. I think if you and your family or whoever wants to come up with you. All right, you ready? It's going to be a while. Whereas, well, let's start. Office of the Mayor, Office Proclamation of the City of Santa Fe, Bando Oficial de la Villa Real de Santa Fe de San Francisco de Asís, Nuevo Mexico. Whereas Sebastián E. Gurale Sr. was born on September 19, 1971, to Daniel and Bernadette Goudelet, and has 3 siblings, Lupita, Daniela, and Miguel Goudelet, and is the proud husband of 29 years to Alva Goudelet, and the proud father of Maria Bonita and Sebastian E. Goudelet II. And whereas Sebastian had the honor of portraying the role of Capitan General Don Diego de Vargas Zapata y Luján, Ponce de León, el Marqués de la Nava de Barcinas during the 1996 Fiesta de Santa Fe. And by the way, that's why Renee had me read that part, because it's the hardest part. Whereas Sebastian began his career with the city of Santa Fe on July 20th, 1991, as a mail carrier in the mail and duplicating office for 3 years, and 7 years in the finance department, and 18 years in the city manager's office. And whereas, as a result of his strong work ethic, firm dedication, desire for learning, and extraordinary passion for serving his community, Sebastian worked his way up from an entry-level position into management and played a vital role in establishing and becoming the first Constituent Services Division Director. And whereas Sebastian played a vital role in establishing the city's first governmental channel, Comcast 28, and the city's first Office of Emergency Management. Sebastian played an essential role in implementing 3 customer relations management CRM systems. Most recently, he was instrumental in developing and preparing the new CRM RFP, the functional and technical requirements, and in providing critical supporting documentation that secured funding for a new CRS system. And whereas between August 2010 and February 2014, in addition to overseeing the Constituent Services Division, he served as the acting Parking Division Director, managing 63 employees. He led his team in developing and implementing several new policies and standard operating procedures, which ultimately led to an increase in revenue and created a budget surplus in the division for the first time ever.
And whereas Sebastian successfully led the parking division through 2 internal audits, 1 forensic audit, and 1 audit led by the New Mexico Attorney General's office. He also implemented an internal supervisory development training program, an updated recruitment process, the city's first credit card parking meter system, and oversaw the implementation of a new parking management software system. And whereas throughout his career he was honored as the Employee of the Month on 3 different occasions and received numerous Muchas Gracias awards and certificates of appreciation. These honors were awarded to him for his involvement in the 1996 Fiesta de Santa Fe, for his exemplary performance in coordinating and staffing major events and assisting with visitations from national and international delegates, and for his efforts in coordinating the emergency call center and city's response during and after emergency events. And whereas Sebastian has always been known as a great team player, a strong project manager, and known especially for his extraordinary commitment to customer service. And whereas to his fellow employees, Sebastian is known to have a smile and warm greeting and a perpetual habit of saying yes to any request made of him. He has had a tradition of sharing his love and appreciation of music and culture with city employees, and frequently brought his guitar to City Hall to sing Las Mañanitas to staff, honoring them for their birthdays or special occasions. And whereas Sebastian brought his natural leadership skills, broad shoulders, and big heart into his professional relationships, and truly connected with his staff and offered advice and words of wisdom, he has been a true mentor to countless city employees. And whereas on May 27, 2019, Sebastian begins his accelerated retirement and officially retires on November 1st, 2019, after 28 years of commendable service to the residents, businesses, and visitors of the city of Santa Fe.
And before I, yeah. And something that didn't make it into the proclamation but is in all of our hearts is that we're happy to see you healthy, We're happy to see you taking care of yourself, taking time for yourself, and spending time with your family, which is the most important contribution of all. So thank you for that, too. And with that, now therefore I, Alan Weber, Mayor of the City of Santa Fe, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 29, 2019, as Sebastian E. Gurale Senior Day. That's yours, my friend. Congratulations.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, first of all, I want to thank my wife and my kids for putting up with me for so many years and being part of my life here at City Hall. One of the times that I had won the Employee of the Month was joked up here by Councilor Heldemeyer. Said that my kids are here more frequently than some city employees are. And in which case they were. A special thanks to my wife. I know she was putting this together on the sneaks. And a special thanks to Sarah Smith and to Celeste for putting this all together. And Councilor Lindell kind of shared that with me on Friday afternoon. And she mentioned to me, she goes, well, I'll see you on Wednesday. I was like, no, I have nothing to do here on Wednesday anymore. She goes, well, you're on the agenda. I said, no, I think everything I done has ever been taken off. She goes, no, you're on the agenda. But thank you very much. It was great. It was awesome. I want to thank my father for instilling in me a strong sense of community, the value of what it is to know where you're coming from, where you've been, the value of your culture, tradition, language, how important it is to maintain that. We unfortunately lost my mother too in December of 2017, but my mom, she's here, and I would thank my mom for instilling in me a loving heart, a compassionate heart, and the value of standing up for what is right, and for understanding that what is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. I want to thank all of you. None of this work that has been mentioned in here, it's amazing that you kept track of all of this stuff. But none of this work could have been done if it wasn't for the help of all city employees. All of you are the beating heart of Santa Fe. You are what makes the city of Santa Fe great, and you are what makes the city of Santa Fe a top destination in the world. So a thanks and acknowledgement and all my respect and honor to all city employees. To Izzy in Armenia, thank you very much for all your support. And to Christine, I wish you all the very best of luck. I want to thank Eric and Yolanda. Yolanda, when we first started, it was amazing. Erin, it's been a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure working and serving all of you. And with that, with all my respect and gratitude, thank you very much. Awesome.
Mayor, if I could add also, on May 27th, 1994, so May 27th is a great day. Sebastian went to the hospital to sing Mañanitas when I first had my daughter, my oldest daughter, so thanks, Seb.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. So I believe, as per previously requested, we're on to item number 11. So, Councilor Ives, we're at item number 11.
Yes.
Is there something we need to know that you need to tell us, or how are we proceeding? We have, the answer is at the podium.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Weber, councilors, Councilor Ives. So this item was brought forth by the state engineer as a memorandum of understanding between the city and the New Mexico Office of the State Engineer to be able to put equipment on our facilities at Nichols Reservoir and other in order to monitor and put on the OSC's website the Acequia del Llano, which we serve. So these are irrigation deliveries that will be metered through Nichols and then put on the OSC. It helps us as a city observe the deliveries by the end of this fiscal year. And I'd like to give my appreciation for the city attorney for getting this item onto the city council agenda. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Councilor Ives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for that, Alan, and thank you for bringing this measure forward. As you know, this is something I've had interest in for a number of years, and it's really been from the perspective of ensuring that the city has the capacity to understand how its water is used and measured in order that we might better be able to act accordingly in our measures to ensure protection of that significant resource for the city. We have 4 acequias. This would be the first to receive this type of monitoring, and certainly the hope would be to progress onward, hopefully in cooperation with the state engineer, as evidenced by this agreement, to do similarly with the 3 other acequias, again, to allow us to have that information to understand how water is being used. This is also significant from the perspective of we do have a court decree that requires us to make certain deliveries to the acequias, and so these types of monitoring circumstances will allow us to ensure that we are in compliance with that decree and meeting our obligations to the pacientes and others involved in the acequias. So from my perspective, especially because the state engineer actually has the funding to do this, it's a win-win-win circumstance for the city, which I am certainly hopeful will lead to more work with the state engineer to understand again how all the water in Santa Fe is being used so that we can appropriately plan for the future for that precious resource. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I would move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Councilor Harris?
Yes.
Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Councilor Vihel Coppler?
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal?
Yes.
Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We have an information item on the question of affordable housing and the definition and pricing of homes. Alexandra Ladd.
Thank you, Mayor Weber, members of the council. The report in front of you is presented every year to the governing body as per our Santa Fe Homes Program ordinance. And what it does is after HUD releases its annual area median income data, we adjust the pricing schedule both for the homeownership units in the Santa Fe Homes Program that are required as part of our inclusionary zoning requirement, but also for what we reassess what is affordable for different income ranges in terms of rent. I won't go into too many details because I think it's pretty well explained, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions. I did want to make a couple of observations. Our incomes went up. This is based on data that is assembled for the preceding 12 months. So sometimes there's a little bit of a lag time. Like sometimes we have a great year, but the incomes don't appear to go up. Other times during the recession, when incomes were certainly on the ground going down, our area median incomes, it took kind of another year to catch up. So incomes have gone up in sort of a healthy way, I think. What that does is it pushes up the pricing of the homes. However, this year, interest rates also went up. So that depressed the price of the home. So we are almost at standstill here with just slightly lower than we had last year. So that's actually good news for our home buyer, because somebody at the same income may now qualify in a lower income tier and actually be eligible to buy a lower priced house. And I do explain that in the memo, but I'm happy to answer any other questions about that. The news on the rental front is, in this particular memo, I describe how we calculate the affordability gap between what HUD's fair market rents are for the region, for the city, and what an affordable rent in each, for each bedroom size would be. And that gap then is the basis for the fee that we establish as a fee in lieu currently for our market rate rental projects that are getting entitlements and in process of being built. One thing I did this year that I've never done before, and this will change according to what HUD decides is appropriate for our local housing authorities, but because we're a high-cost area, they were given permission to use a number 10% above what HUD had established as the fair market rent. So that gives us a little bit more of an affordability gap, and I think it's probably a little bit closer to the rents that people are experiencing on the street, which ultimately increases the fee. We do, we have to wait generally until April to get this data, which is a little frustrating for the developers I work with, because they say it's January, where are the new prices? And I have to tell them, no, we've got to wait until April. We do give everyone a 30-day grace period, so somebody who's in the certification contracting process doesn't have to then be recertified as long as they're able to close on their homes. And generally, our nonprofit partners, HomeWise and the Housing Trust, who are under contract with the city to help with the income certification and all of the other aspects to getting a lower income home buyer in a house, know that and are very good at getting people closed within that grace period. And I think that's about all. It does drive home the point that you want a lower interest rate on your loan, no matter what. But with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for Alexandra at this point? Yeah, Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciated the calculation for fee in lieu, because I never knew how it was calculated. And I was curious, is that 10% high cost area just their standard increase? That's 10%'s what every city with high cost of living has?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Villarreal, the housing authorities have to, I don't know if they apply for it or if they request an allowance to use a 10% number, but that's the number that HUD allows.
Okay. And then the actual calculations or the formula that you presented to us, is that also a HUD standard that's given to us, or how do we decide?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Villarreal, you mean to establish the affordability, the fee? Or
right, the fee.
That is a methodology that we came up with in 2016 when we amended the ordinance to allow the fee in lieu. And I researched other cities across the country and how fees were established. And this seemed like it made the most sense intuitively. If you're not going to provide the unit there, you should be able to provide the difference between what that renter needs, what they can afford, and what they would need to pay at another project, another place.
Do you see this as an average? I guess I'm always curious if the affordability gap should be higher. In some cases, I'm not sure. For us, especially because we don't anticipate rents going up later on after they've paid their fee in lieu of units, and we hand it off in a way to the developers. There's no way to actually, how would you say, get the adjusted if any rents go up, if the rent cost goes up. I guess I'm just curious if there's a way to calculate it into the future, even though we have one calculation, but if there's a possibility for future increases that we could also account for and have them, I don't know if they would pay us or how that would look, but have you seen that happen anywhere else?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Villarreal, once the check is written,
it's done.
It's really hard to go back and ask for more money. I don't see, I mean, we could build in some sort of inflation factor, I suppose. What I was looking for and what was approved when we came up with the methodology was to be able to tie the process to an external data source. So I didn't want developers telling me how much rent they were going to charge. I didn't want to base it on what a renter said their income was. Like, I really needed to use an external source for that. So it does fluctuate over time, and it has gone down. We've had a couple years where everything went down slightly. So, I think that would drive, well, and the other issue also is that often the developer who's paying the fee doesn't end up being the owner operator of the project.
Right. And one last question. The calculation talks about there's a times 15%. Was that just, does that fluctuate, or is that pretty fixed, the 15% that we multiply it by?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Villarreal, that is the required percentage in the ordinance.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Councilor Vihil-Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you refresh my memory? Does that 15% expire? Does it have a sunset clause, or?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Vihil-Coppler, that 15% requirement is the required percentage in the inclusionary zoning program. What expires, what has a sunset, is the by right fee in lieu payment. Previously, before we made the amendment in 2016, a developer who wanted to pay a fee in lieu had to demonstrate a financial hardship and to the governing body's satisfaction that they were not able to provide the units on site, and then they would propose an alternate form of compliance. It could be a fee, it could be donating land in another site, it could be any number of options, as long as the governing body determined that that alternate form best met the affordable housing needs in the community. So on December 31st, that amendment sunsets, but we're in the process of putting together a final draft for public review and comment that will preserve a fee in lieu option, but combine it with other ways to incentivize naturally occurring affordable housing, so that if there's a market rate project that is going to have what we consider fairly moderately priced units in line with what we know our emerging workforce needs, for instance, then we wouldn't also layer on, and now you have to do all these other things too. We would say, thank you, that is inventory that we need, and they would be subject to a restriction to hold those rents within a certain moderately priced range for a 10-year period. And then if they offered even deeper affordability, then they could do fewer units at a deeper affordability. But the idea is to kind of create a menu, because different options, real estate development, as you well know, is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and there are many factors that are different for each project.
And so when you say you're getting together something for public comment toward December of this year, will that be coming later to the council, or what is the process?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Vihil-Coppler, we will have several stakeholder meetings to get comments and really refine the concept. Then we will put together the ordinance red lines, and it will go through the full approval process. So it will go to Planning Commission, it will go to all the city committees, it will go to the Community Development Commission, it will probably go to the Economic Development Committee. This is what we did last year. We took it to at least 5 different public meetings, and then it will get approved through a public hearing at the City Council.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I wish you would address one thing for both me and for the general public, which is this language of affordability. It's, as we've gotten deeper into a discussion about Santa Fe's housing needs in general and a variety of items on our strategy platform to address housing, the notion of affordability has slipped into the language as we need affordable housing for Santa Fe, but then there is the HUD definition of what is affordable housing, which is a much more income-driven calculation. So while we do need more affordable housing, we also have a specific affordable housing program. And I wonder if, as we move forward on all of the things you were just discussing, whether it's the rental fee for rental units, or it's the accessory dwelling unit, or the short-term rental reevaluation, can you help us unpack and maybe use better language going forward so that we are not confusing trying to make housing more affordable with what is actually the affordable housing category within HUD's definition?
Mayor Weber, members of the council, I think that's a really, really interesting point. What the standard across the whole industry that applies to anyone's income range would be that your housing costs, including utilities, should not be more than a third of your monthly income. Otherwise, you are considered cost burden, and that doesn't matter what income range you're in. That's a standard rule of thumb. So what we have to go with sort of this clunkier version of creating income percentile categories and then calculating an affordable rent to that range of incomes. That's not going to be the right affordable rent for many, many people, actual real people in that income range. So that's a little, I think, frustrating, because it makes the public certainly feel like, well, you say that's affordable to me, it's not affordable to me. And there are certain subsidy programs, particularly through public housing, the rental assistance vouchers, they start with the individual's income. And they say you are going to pay 1/3 of that toward your housing costs. The assistance, the voucher, makes up the difference between what they at their exact income can afford and the cost of the unit. And unfortunately, from a regulatory perspective, we can't do that because we're not actually intersecting with the individuals. So we have to create kind of this broader framework. With that said, I think our nonprofits do a really great job when they, especially on the home ownership side, when they are placing people, or when they're trying to connect people with a home buying opportunity. They will make up the difference. They will say, technically you fall in this category and this should be affordable, but we can see why it's actually not affordable to you. So we're going to find another subsidy source. We're going to find another soft second. We're going to find something so that your monthly cost is within that affordability range for your specific income.
And I think it's also fair to say that there are different approaches, different tactics and strategies to make the cost of housing in Santa Fe overall more accessible to more people. In general, we think that producing more housing of all kinds will change, the market will be more full, there'll be more supply, where at the moment I gather our vacancy rate in rentals is effectively zero. And when that happens, naturally it becomes less affordable or less able for people to afford it, regardless of the price range it's in. So we're really approaching the notion of affordability in a variety of different ways, some directly specific to a group of people where vouchers and other programs can help them get into housing, others where increasing the supply of housing overall will, if the law of supply and demand still works, end up changing how much housing costs in Santa Fe overall. Is that a fair description?
Mayor Weber, members of the council, I think that is a great description, because I think we have to look at adding inventory as one way to affect the market forces. But it's a pretty high level way, and it also has its own clunkiness because sometimes markets do things that we're not expecting. So I've always thought of it as approaching it from also a preservation standpoint. If we can make, either through rehab, make a home livable for a very low income senior, for instance, that has made that home is now affordable to that homeowner, whereas she may have needed to leave the home because it didn't have heat or it didn't have grab bars or something necessary for her to be there. Likewise, if somebody is in danger of being evicted, if we provide, and it may not even be very much assistance, it may just be a couple months worth of rent, maybe they have to catch up on their utility arrears. well, we've made that unit affordable for that person, and hopefully they are getting back on their feet and they're able to carry forward with living in that unit, because displacement in all of its forms is really the most expensive way to handle a housing situation. So the more we can keep people stably housed and open up more opportunities, and there's also a very strong economic development tie there too, because half of the equation is the cost of the housing, the other half is the level of income. So the more that we can put into job training and skills training and really building up the capacity of our younger workforce in particular, and as well as keeping the more highly skilled workforce here, we're creating more capacity on the buyer's side as well.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah, Councilor Vihil-Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to say to Alexandra that I'm just very thankful for all of the information you provide, not only to us, but you have been a wonderful presenter to the Santa Fe Association of Realtors in educating them about this whole process, because even some realtors don't really understand the program. And in that regard, then they're not of any use to home buyers in this category. So I just want this governing body to know what a resource Alexandra has been to that community. And you have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm very thankful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. Thanks for the information, much appreciated.
You're welcome.
We move to matters from our city manager.
Mayor, councilors, I have nothing to report for matters this evening. Thank you.
Okay, from the city attorney.
Mayor, councilors, a couple of things. I did send out notice that the Supreme Court for the state of New Mexico did deny cert on our petition for review of the Court of Appeals opinion on our DWI forfeiture program. So that means that the Espinosa case, which found the Albuquerque DWI forfeiture program to be preempted by the New Mexico Forfeiture Act, and then later Court of Appeals opinions which applied that case to our program, finding it also preempted, are basically the final word from the New Mexico courts on that matter. So we have some options there. We can repeal our ordinance. If we keep it on the books, it's just not, we just can't apply it. So I do recommend that we repeal it so that there's not confusion about whether or not we have the program. We could look at following the New Mexico Forfeiture Act, which is a very different construct. So if someone's interested in that, I just suggest we have a follow-up meeting to talk about it. But it's a very different type of program. So that's one matter as an update. And so we are looking at how to use those funds. There's about $500,000 from that program from prior sales of vehicles under our ordinance before it was found to be preempted. So we can use that for further treatment and prevention of DWI.
Good idea.
Yeah. We have had some preliminary conversations about some options for that funding. And the second thing is that I'm working with IT to create a portal. They have a preliminary version of it established already. We're going to do a test with it for posting proposals in RFPs and score sheets so that the council can have access to those as soon as we start sending them to committee for review. So as soon as that is live, I will alert all the members of the governing body, and we'll provide opportunities to train on how to use that. It should be pretty simple. You'd be just using your email from the city and your password from the city to sign in. And then lastly, if someone would like to make a motion, I would recommend that we go into executive session to discuss a threatened or pending litigation which the city is or may become a participant.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes, Mayor, I move that the governing body go into executive session to discuss the matters listed on the agenda as recommended by the city attorney.
Is there a second?
Yes. Councilor Ives just left, sorry. Councilor Lindell.
Excused. Councilor Ives is excused.
Councilor Villada.
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth. Yes. Councilor Vihil-Coppler. Yes. Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Beita.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. And Mayor Weber.
Yes.
The motion is.
Thank you. We will move to executive session at this point. looking for somebody to give the magic, say the magic words to bring us out of our spell here.
Mayor Weber, I can suggest a motion if that would be helpful.
Oh, that would be so helpful.
The motion would-
Councilor Rivera's AWOL.
If someone would like to make a motion to reconvene, stating for the record that the matters discussed during executive session were limited to those stated in the agenda. So moved.
Very good. Can you call the roll?
You bet.
She did all.
Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councilor Vihel Coppler,
Yes?
Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Beta,
Yes.
Councilor Harris, Councilor Lindell, Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Matters from the city clerk.
I have none this evening, thank you.
Communications from the governing body. Councilor Vihel Coppler, let's start at your end of the dais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to just express appreciation to Public Works and their staff for being there and on time and on schedule and hanging the veterans banners. And we've gotten a lot of very wonderful response from the community and a lot of press coverage, which I'm thankful for. But the most important thing I'm thankful for is that the veterans were very, very happy about this. And I will let you know that we will be coming back to ask for more placements, because when you actually look at them on Sirius Road, they do make an impact, but they don't make much of an impact because there's not very many of them. We were limited to 20, and there's certainly a long stretch, and they could go a lot further. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and I didn't earlier under remembrances because I was not feeling very composed enough to bring this up, but I am now. And that is just to say that our family is remembering my brother Jerry, who was killed 50 years ago on the last day of school after he left E.J. Martinez close to our family home. He was on his bicycle, and it was a hit and run. And we always remember that because, you know, it's a life that we never got to experience in our family. And being that he was on his bicycle, and, you know, it certainly brings for me, as chair of the Bicycle and Trails Committee, the importance of bicycle safety. And back then, you didn't have to wear helmets. They weren't even invented. At any rate, I don't think anything could have prevented this, but it sure would have been nice to have that person stop and render aid. And of course, we never knew who it was and what could we do then. So today's an important day for us.
Condolences.
Thank you.
Councilor Abeyta.
Nothing, Mayor, thank you.
Councilor Villarreal.
I have nothing, thank you.
Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. Firstly, condolences to you, Counselor. I'd just like to encourage counselors and the public that this Saturday is Clean Up the Plaza Day. Starts early in the morning, 7 o'clock. It's also 7 to noon is the fishing derby. It's 2 activities downtown that are both very, very fun. You can walk from one to the other, and in fact, a couple of years ago, Maria and I painted the one of the bridges with a couple of guys that we became friends with, and we still see them around town, and we are friends. I probably wore more paint than I got on the bridge, but everybody was pretty kind about it, and it was some real camaraderie and a fellowship that feel good about doing that kind of thing. And I encourage everybody to come downtown. It's a pretty fun time. So those are the couple of items that I have, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce an ordinance amending section 11-14.5 to allocate the proceeds from the sale or lease of the Santa Fe Estates to the general fund.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other items you want to speak to?
I would like to co-sponsor the resolution that you're introducing on the fiscal year 2018 audit.
Okay. Duly noted. Oh, we'll come back to you in a minute, Counselor Rivera. Counselor Romero Worth.
I just want to wish Councilor Vigil Koppler condolences. Very sorry for your loss. And I have nothing further. Thank you.
Counselor Rivera, we skipped you by accident. Matters from the governing body.
Did anybody, I heard, I think Councilor Liddell mentioned painting on the plaza.
Yes, sir.
Anyone mention the fishing derby? Okay, that's all we got.
I have 3 items to mention that are being introduced. As the Councilor Harris mentioned, a resolution accepting and approving the fiscal year 2018 audit, a resolution readopting and supplementing fee schedule for permits issued by our land use department, and a resolution calling for a regular local election be held November 5, 2019. Those are being introduced to go through the process. I would add to the fun things to do department, now that we're, I think, into spring and summer. Tomorrow night is opening night for the Fuego. I happen to be throwing out the first pitch. If you've seen the video of that poor employee who beamed the camera person behind the plate when she threw out the first pitch, I promise to try to do better, but I can't guarantee anything. But I did have the great pleasure of shaking hands with and meeting this year's team yesterday. They are a really great group of young men. The general manager is, as you know, a tremendous woman who has really taken the Fuego under her wing to guide it forward. And they really are a great deal of fun for everybody in town. So tomorrow night is opening night. There'll be festivities. And on top of that, it is baseball. I mean, what's wrong with baseball? Yes, Counselor.
Although you said you couldn't guarantee certain things, can you guarantee that you'd be pitching from the pitcher's mound?
No, they do not allow civilians. Pitchers are very, very, very protective of the mound, and
okay.
Actually, there's a famous story about Bob Gibson when he was pitching for the Cardinals, and Tim McCarver was the catcher, and McCarver came out to talk to him to settle him down, and Gibson said, "Get the hell off my mound." And that was to his own catcher. So civilians are not allowed on the mound.
What time is the first?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Be there, be square.
Well, solid waste agent.
And also a quick word on behalf of the team. There are still, I think, a dozen or so players who are looking for, speaking of housing, they need to be housed. They not only play ball for very little money, but they also do community service as part of their participation on the team, and they're a great asset to the community. So if anybody knows of an opportunity to give a Fuego ball player some free housing, I think it'd be a great way to support the team this year. That's everything. Oh, and yes, Councilor Viel-Koppler, condolences, seriously. That's a loss. I think we're dealing at a time where, as Councilor Lindell noted in her reflections earlier today, there are so many tragedies and reminders of how fragile life can be. So, condolences. With that, let's shift gears to the 7 o'clock session, and let's begin with petitions from the floor. If there is someone who wishes to be heard at this time on a matter other than one of the public hearings, please come up now. We'll give you 2 minutes to speak to anything that you wish to bring to the council members' attention.
Stephanie Beninato, PO Box 16017, New Mexico. Okay, thank you. A couple of things. Recreation, it seems that the city is trying to lessen the recreation opportunities. We have regularly 3 pools. We only have 2 operating. Now we are going to have a 3rd operating, but we're told there's not enough lifeguards to open it for its regular hours. And again, I'm suggesting a waiver program between 6 and 10 in the morning so adults can swim laps outside where they like to do it, and the city will continue to get revenue by charging the extra fee to go to the bicentennial pool. The other thing that I want to show you is a problem with, again, 1008 Don Cubero, and why we're having trouble with Carol Johnson. So this was a controversial property. It sticks out into the alley. It violated all kinds of different things, and the city red tagged it and then took the red tag away without actually really requiring even what was on the permit. My neighbor wrote to Carol Johnson and said, I see you took the red tag away. They're starting construction. When, you know, what's going on with the permit? And Ms. Johnson said, and I'm quoting, she said, the permit was reissued on February 7th, 2019. Construction permit is considered a final action by the land use director, and as such, the time for appeal is 15 days. However, the actual ordinance says that the final action of a land use director for, in the case of building permits, is the date of the posting of the permit, not the issuance, and that's 14.3.17C4A. So this is a misstatement that should be obvious, and given this controversial property, you would think that Ms. Johnson would be a little more careful. And again, I just want to show you these photos where, whoops, is that right? You can see that. No, that's upside down, right? Okay. So this is the permit down here for the one at 1008. You cannot see anything on this permit at all except there's a number written in. On these 2 permits, which are in the same area, you can see that they're fully written in. You know, there's a city signature, there's a date, there's a permit number, there's an owner name, there's a description of what's going on. There's not even a date on this, and the city has been inspecting under this permit, which I don't even see how anybody could consider it valid or how anybody would know when it was issued. And again, the city has no method for actually validating when something's posted, and I would suggest that the city start such a system. If posting it is the effective date, then date stamp a photo, send it back in, do an affidavit, do something so the city can say, we know on this date it was posted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there others who wish to be heard at this time during the petitions from the floor? No. Let's move to appointments then. We have 3 sets of appointments. First, the Economic Development Advisory Committee.
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
And on that point, it was postponed last time because of residency concerns. Both candidates live within the city limits. Both of them reside in District 4. Kim Abeta Martinez lives at 3249 Najoni Drive. Ryan Cordova lives at 3856 Monteverde Road. Economic Development is a 9-member committee. 5 of the members live in District 1. Only 1 lives in District 2, and none live in District 3 or 4. So this would at least give us 2 residents from the south side.
Thank you.
Committee. Thank you.
Other comments? Yes, Councilor Villacopoulos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to know the 2 candidates before us, what interest did they express? I don't know if they were even interviewed or much about them except for their resume. So, which I find not really applicable to what I would believe an economic development member should have in terms of background. But since they were put forward for appointment tonight, I'd just like to know more about maybe they have outside interests in helping the city grow in our economic base, and so I'd just like to know a little bit more. And I'm glad to know that they're District 4. I'm happy about that. So if anyone here knows anything about their desires and why they would want to serve on a board such as this.
Any information about the candidates? I know I did not meet with them personally. I do know that they were well regarded by people who we checked with. They do have business experience in both cases and finance experience. They self-nominated, as most of our positions are handled. Nobody went out and recruited them. If you were asking if there was a effort to bring them into the Economic Development Committee, they were people who said, seeing the opportunity, stepped up and said they wanted to serve.
Okay, and then the next question I have is, one of them's term expires next month. So would that be just for a 1-month appointment, or how would that work? We don't know?
Mayor, I can answer that. So that person would serve for 1 month because it's filling an unexpired term, and then we would bring them back for reappointment for a full term. So right now, it's just to fill an unexpired term.
And do we know which one's going to do which position?
Yes.
As far as...
Like, whose term is going to expire? Which of the two will take which terms?
What is listed on the memo. Okay. Let me open it up, sorry.
Okay, and then I would say that the coach had me at Paul Weir, so I'm good with that.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that I'd only met Ryan Cordova a couple of occasions, but I did a lot of business with his father and his brother, Ricardo. Ricardo, at a certain point, he and his family moved to Colorado, but I just, based on my familiarity and the work that I'd done in the past with the Cordova family, I would be supportive. They're energetic, smart, good operators, and so.
Thank you, Counselor.
Hopefully that counts.
Move for approval.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. We also have a single appointment as an alternate to the Film and Digital Media Commission, Alexandria Bombach. She would be an alternate, term ending 3/2020. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we are a full slate of the Santa Fe River Commission. I'll read the names. There's Philip J. Beauvais, Susan Coulter, Anna C. Hansen, Zoe R. Isaacson, Heidi M. Klingel, Rachel Coleman, Frederick Emil Sawyer, Vanessa Springer, and Andrew D. Black.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, if I'm remembering your earlier admonition, City Clerk, we're going to move item number 2 up above item number 1.
That's correct.
And so perhaps Bradley can bring us to the matter at hand. Thank you, sir. Comes out of your salary. Bradley, please give us the lowdown on the up-down.
Mayor, councilors, today for public hearing is the ordinance to refinance the University of Art and Design debt. I've distributed a summary of the transaction. Currently, as of this morning on the news, given the turmoil in the trade deal with China, the 10-year Treasury was at the lowest rate in the last 20 months. So that means that tomorrow morning, if approved, this ordinance tonight we will lock in interest rates on the refinance at the lowest rate in the past 20 months. So we couldn't have had a better opportunity to refinance the University of Art and Design.
I think you planned that.
I wish. Basically, the effects are we're going to lower the interest rates from the current 5.32% to 6.7% to something well below 4%. This year savings will be, the total net debt savings will be $3,869,000, or a net present value savings of 16.92%. State statute won't allow you to do it unless you get a savings of at least 3%. So we're doing really well on this. We're going to extend the maturity in order, because we do not know what we're going to be doing with the property, to minimize the cash outflow while we are in the process of developing the redevelopment of the University of Art and Design property. We've extended the maturity by 3 years, and this reduces the cash flow outflow by the city by $180,000 per year for the first 17 years. Obviously, the last 3 years would all be additional payments. So total all-in debt service, we're going to reduce the University of Art and Design debt service from approximately $2.2 million down to just under $1.7 million per year.
So the savings per year under this refinancing would be in the neighborhood of
$500,000.
Okay. Any questions about this? I think Councilor Cheapskate has something she wants to say.
I'll make it simple. Nice work. Thank you. This takes some pressure off from us, and when you go through and you add up all the numbers on the next page, you guys have done a terrific job on this, Brad. Thank you very much. And all the, I know it wasn't just you, some other staff worked on it, but this is terrific. Can
Councilor Harris, I think, has something to say.
Yeah, I also very much appreciate the work that's been done, and looks like luck is on our side on this one. But I think it's important for you to take a minute and just talk about the call feature, how it's built into this transaction.
Thank you, Councilor Harris, Mayor, councilors. We currently, the reason why we're refinancing this now is that municipal bonds tend to have a 10-year call feature. These bonds were issued in 2009. This is year 2019. Therefore, they became eligible to be called. If we were to go out and just refund this debt with the same call feature, we would not be able to do anything with this debt for 10 years. This savings also includes a cost. We have had NMFA put an annual call feature into this. This is a very unusual transaction for municipal debt. To the point where NMFA said when they went to the market said, we don't want that bond, and NMFA is doing it in-house with their cash to get this done. So what we have now, and this call feature does have a cost. It's about $110,000 to about $140,000 per year, but we can call this bond or any portion of this bond over the remaining term annually. So if we were to go out and decide that we wanted to sell a quarter of the property, we could take the proceeds from the sale, use that to pay down the debt, and we can pay that debt off in 1 year or any portion of that in any year going forward. So it gives the city the flexibility it needs to design whatever redevelopment we want. We're not going to be stuck with this debt. We'll be able to exit it on favorable terms.
Exactly, and without this flexibility built into it, the costs associated with buying it out early is just exorbitant. So I think this is really an important transaction for the city for a lot of reasons. Yes, saving some money, but probably more importantly, in my mind, is the flexibility that it really is built into it. So congratulations.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rivera.
Thank you, Brad. What's the, what says based on May 24th Treasury rates plus 10 basis points? What's the value of the 10 basis points?
On 23 million, 10 basis points is 1/10 of 1%, so 23,000.
Thank you.
Other questions for Bradley? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve adoption of ordinance number 2019 dash.
Sorry, this is a public hearing, so we need to do that
Oh,
first.
my mistake once again. This is a public hearing. If there's someone who wishes to speak to this matter, having explored it with our finance team, now would be a good time to step up and testify.
I'm back on.
Now we can close the public hearing. Apologies.
And what ordinance number is it, Ms. Vigil?
7.
I move for the adoption of ordinance number 2019-7.
Okay. Could we call the roll?
Counselor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes, and I'd like to co-sponsor.
Yes. Counselor Beta?
Yes.
Counselor Harris? Counselor Lindell? Counselor Rivera?
Yes, and co-sponsor?
Yes. Counselor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Thank you. Thank you for this piece of work. I think it took a considerable amount of not only work to get it done, but to perceive the opportunity and to recognize that it would be to our advantage as a financial piece of strategy really is a testimony to the finance department and the entire team there. So thank you for seeing the opportunity, seizing the opportunity, and then carrying it through. Appreciate it. The next public hearing is consideration of bill number 2019-4, and I turn that over to Andrew. Sweetie pie.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and committee. I'm here from the Water Conservation Office with this proposed ordinance. So I guess I just do a quick summary. Sorry, it's my first time doing this, so please give me dirty looks if I'm doing it wrong.
Believe me, you'll just follow me and you'll do it wrong.
So this is an ordinance that we're introducing that's really designed to replace an existing commercial rebate ordinance. This is really designed to make this a simpler process for commercial entities to take part in. It's going to make it more similar to the process we've been real successful with residential rebates. And essentially, we've made a few changes in here to address things that we've heard from the commercial water user community have made it difficult for them to comply with this. So perhaps with that, I could take some questions.
Are there questions about the maybe specifics around the changes that are being made or why it's advisable to make these changes? Anybody? Councilor Romero Worth, you want to weigh in on this at all? Not at the moment.
I would just note that this passed unanimously through Public Utilities and also Finance, so it's been heard, I think, by everybody. And yeah, I think if people have questions.
Councilor Vihil Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You might recall in Public Utilities, one of the concerns was, well, if you look at page 3 of this, at the top of the page, it discusses that if the applicant is not the owner of the commercial building, the owner will actually get the rebate money, but then they sign that they promise they're going to give it to their tenant who actually saved the water with the whatever appliances and such. I had a concern about, when tenant relations go bad, and what would we use to enforce the owner paying the tenant the money that they get rebated. Sometimes we have unlawful items going on where an owner keeps money for a security deposit that maybe they believe they're owed. What's to prevent this from happening here?
Yes, Councilor, I do recall this discussion from the Public Utility Commission hearing. So the intention here is that the 30 business days, the intention is that this would be fairly easy to accomplish by reducing it from the rent of the applicant. And the expectation when I discussed this with the community and with some other staff is that essentially the applicant could address this by reducing the payment on their rent. In terms of what we would do in the event if there was if this basically didn't happen and some of the parties didn't comply with what they're supposed to do, we're hoping to address that. We're going to do some administrative procedures to get into the specifics on this, but we didn't want to incorporate it into the ordinance itself because we'd like to make sure we can get it right
Sure.
and put it in a place we can work with it.
And generally, in instances where there is some conflict, we say, well, they can go to court. And so I would assume it's not going to be cost beneficial for the tenant who is owed the money to recover anything that's worth it. So I just want to make sure that when procedures are put together that we don't put the onus on the tenant to have to take legal action just to get a measly sum of money back. But I do know there are unscrupulous landlords, and it would seem that we would just be sure that the money is going to the person who actually saved the water.
That point is it's a great point, and we'll be very careful to do that. I can actually mention also from that PUC meeting, one of the other comments that we got was from Councilor Rivera, who pointed out that because this is designed to make this more available for businesses, that we ought to extend a grace period to businesses who've gone ahead and put in things that would be eligible for this rebate during the period when the previous ordinance was in place that was difficult to comply with. So that's our intention too, to incorporate that into the administrative procedures and give a 6-month grace period, which is the standard period of time during which we'll offer the rebate. So we'll make sure to take your concerns into account as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Harris.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Erdman, so it's interesting. I don't know the particulars and why it was so difficult, but as you note here in the FIR, the rebate as currently structured has had no applicants, but no fiscal impact because the rebate budget is set. How much is, what's the dollar amount on the rebate budget?
Well, so the total rebate budget gets set each year. For this fiscal year, the rebate budget, I could say I'm 85% certain that the rebate budget was set at $150,000 for all the rebates that are available through the Water Resources Department, not just specific to this, but for everything we've got.
So residential and commercial, 150,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is actually lower than it has been in previous years. We had we had increased it because we thought that there was going to be people taking advantage of this commercial rebate, which could potentially be a large rebate where it could be applied for in that way. So it should hopefully it will be taken advantage of by a greater level and help us to get through assigning all those rebates.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Rivera.
Yeah, Councilor Romero Worth, on page 4 it has your amendment, but I'm having a little trouble following it on the ordinance. Can you help explain? It says line 13 and 14 in their entirety, but only the last 2 words have been stricken.
Hold on just a second. So we might need Jesse to speak to this because there were, I think Jesse better explain this.
Mayor, Councilor, I believe the amendment on page 2, lines 13 and 14 were to strike what is in the bill now, including existing language as well as proposed language and stricken language, so that number 3 would read, the rebate amount shall be determined by the Water Conservation Office, period.
Okay, so 13 and 14 will be struck in their entirety?
Correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Public hearing.
Public hearing. This is like Groundhog Day. This is a public hearing, so if there's anyone who wishes to speak, now is the time to come forward. Gosh darn. This is, you're just sitting there laughing at me. That's not fair.
Well, you tried to throw me out, and
It
just
didn't
trying
work.
to ignore
It
me.
didn't work. I was not only trying to conserve water, but trying to conserve time.
I don't take it personally. Mayor and council, my name is Glenn Schiffbauer. I'm the executive director for the Santa Fe Green Chamber of Commerce. We have been working over the past year on a restaurant pilot project, instituting some of the things I think that this resolution will accomplish and even broaden. And I can tell you that the potential is terrific and expansive out there. As we've been visiting with the restaurant owners, they have been very open to trying to just replace aerators and appliances, but also some of the behavioral things. I think going forward, if we can continue to increase these programs, and in particular the audit portion, if that is wrapped into a rebate situation, not only does that entice them to measure what they're using, and you can't really conserve unless you know what the measurements are, but it's also has potential of being a job creator. Part of what we're doing with the Next Generation Water Summit and the courses around that is doing a training program for commercial water auditors. And we've just gotten started with the restaurants, and hopefully we can get into the hotels, and we'll be needing people that can do that kind of thing. So we're fully in support.
Thank you. Others who wish to testify?
Excuse me, Stephanie Benanato. I think Ms. Vigil-Koppler's point is really well taken, and I do think that there needs to be some way to monitor whether the business really gets the refund or not. And it sounds like in some cases maybe it actually could be worth having, maybe to give the business an option, though it should be clearly stated that it is a right of the business to enforce that or to obtain that rebate if the owner doesn't, so that it's, again, clear that they could go forward in a private action if they were going forward maybe for other reasons, and they could include that in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Others wishing to be heard? All right, I will now close the public hearing part. Other comments or questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Sir. Councilor Villarreal.
Yes, and I'd like to co-sponsor.
Okay. Councilor Beta.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Lindell.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Vigil-Koppler.
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Now, Madam Clerk, you had a suggestion about items 3, 4, and 5, I think.
Yes, Mayor. I would propose that we hold one public hearing. These are all changes to the election code, the campaign code, the public campaign finance code. They're all related due to changes in state law. So I would recommend holding a public hearing on H3, H4, and H5, and then we'll have separate motions for the approvals.
Councilor Rivera?
Got a question before we get started. Ms. McSherry, since Councilor Villarreal and myself are running again, and clearly some of these may benefit us as we're running, are we okay to sit and have discussion and in the end vote?
So, Mayor Weber, councilors, most of the changes here are pretty technical. So that's one issue, I would say, that mostly they're to comply with the changes in state law. And they're being recommended by staff for that purpose. If you were to vote for the purpose of benefiting yourself, I would recommend you not do that and then recuse. But if that is not a motivation or an influence, I think that you can still vote on these matters. So
you telling me to vote no so it doesn't look like I'm trying to benefit myself?
I'm telling you, you have to look into your own heart to make that determination. But I don't think it's inherently a conflict, I guess is what I'm saying. But if there were some unknown purpose that you have that I don't know about, and that's possible, and I can't answer that question for you, but I don't think that these are inherently conflicted with your positions as running.
Thank you.
I was just going to add that there were candidates that voted for the ranked choice voting changes and ordinances, so I think that we can handle this one. Thank you.
Okay. So that being said, we'll now consider, at the recommendation of the city clerk, that this is a public hearing to concern items 3, 4, and 5, but we will have to then deal with them individually when the time comes. But if they're all technical amendments in the same zone, we can work as a single hearing. Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe you have the proposed changes in your packet. As the city attorney indicated, the purpose of these, all three of these bills really is just to conform the city's ordinances to the recently enacted changes in state law. And so, so to avoid inconsistencies and references to provisions in the election code that have been repealed, we felt like it was better to refer to the new provisions and clean up other inconsistencies where we found them. But if there are any specific questions, I can go into detail or try to address those that the council may have.
Okay. Councilor Villa-Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question on the item 3. So, and I mostly, I don't know, I'm trying to find it in here, but I don't know if it's there. But the title of this says that somewhere in the middle, and enacting a new provision of the election code to authorize either the city clerk or the Ethics Campaign Review Board to adopt rules applying the code. Why would we have an either or, and how will it be determined which one does it? Would there ever be a conflict?
Councilor Villa-Coppler, I think this is a good question, certainly worth posing for clarification. I would hope there would never be a conflict between any rules that the city clerk promulgates and the Ethics and Campaign Review Board. I think they are probably to adapt to different situations. The types of rules that we contemplate that the city clerk might consider would be rules regarding notifications, certain levels of detail that are not contained in the ordinance themselves, whereas the types of rules that the Ethics and Campaign Review Board would adopt would be related to more of the purview of that board, which is to review ethical complaints, campaign practices, maybe to make recommendations to the governing body. So that we see them as really gap fillers between the ordinances themselves and any, again, any conflict. I would be hard pressed to imagine a situation where they would create a conflict between the two, and the ordinance would always be superseding over them. I think one of the reasons why the city clerk may want to have a rulemaking ability as well is so that it wouldn't require convening the Ethics and Campaign Review Board. But really, this is a policy question for the governing body to consider, and if the governing body doesn't feel like it is necessary for either the Ethics and Campaign Review Board or the city clerk to have that power, then that's certainly a policy choice that you can make. But I found that there were times that the city clerk would have questions which were not squarely addressed by the ordinances and which basically the city attorney's office works with the city clerk to fashion what we think is a legal and appropriate response to that. And so the rules would sort of fall into that category.
You have a great deal of trust. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments at this time? It's a public hearing. Is there somebody who wishes to be heard on these three items individually or collectively? This would be a time to come forward.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I'm Jim Harrington, State Chair of Common Cause New Mexico. We wholeheartedly support these three bills. And at Councilor Romero Worth's request, I prepared a memo that tries to explain the background and purpose of the bills, and it's been included in your packet for 2019-9. And I'll assume you've had a chance to look that over, so I won't repeat that, which I couldn't do in 2 minutes anyway. And other than that, I'll just emphasize that, as the memo says, these bills really are needed to adopt, and as Marcos has said, to adopt our election procedures to the new state law, and most importantly, to make sure that our public campaign finance program will continue to work as it's meant to work and as it's been working, despite some changes that might have upset the apple cart in state law. If you have questions on the bill, I'm sure that Marcos or Yolanda or Aaron will be able to answer them. But if I can explain anything, I'll be here in the audience. And thank you very much. Well, one point on this question that came up from Councilor Vigil Koppler. The Ethics and Campaign Review Board and the city clerk have had a rule-making power under the Public Campaign Finance Code since it was adopted in 2009, and this would just give them the same power under the election code. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes.
Stephanie Beninato. I wanted to address that issue too about the Ethics Review Board and the clerk. And in that other, the Public Finance or the Public Campaign Act, I think it isn't clear who does what, or what is your purview, what's the board's purview, what's the clerk's purview, and I think it leads to actually inaction because no one wants to step on somebody else's toes. And I do also think that any rules that are promulgated should at least have a review by the city attorney's office so that, again, it's just not done out there, and then they need to be published on the webpage. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak to these three items? All right, in that case, I'll close that part of the public hearing.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, individually.
Yeah. So I'd like to move the passage of 2019-9. Is that the best way to do it?
That's correct. And it'll be ordinance 2019-9 also.
Okay. Okay.
Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera? Yes. Councilor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Hill Koppler?
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to move approval of Bill 2019-10.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Harris?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Councilor Hill Koppler?
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal?
Yes.
Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion has been approved.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to move passage of Bill 2019-11.
Second.
Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil Koppler?
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal?
Yes.
Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
Thank you. That completes the business of the evening session. Anybody wish to make a long speech? Seeing no hands, I will adjourn the meeting.